Hey everyone, did you know that over 90% of you watching right now haven't hit that subscribe button? If you enjoy our content, take a second to subscribe. It's free and it really helps us keep bringing you great stories every day. They say time heals all wounds, but sometimes time just buries things deeper until the cracks reach the surface and everything comes crumbling down. When I married Diane, I thought I was finally building the kind of life I'd dreamed about since I was young. A quiet, steady home, laughter at the dinner table, a yard that needed mowing on Saturdays. Nothing grand, just peace. Diane had been through a lot before me. She was once married to a man named Carter. I never met him, just heard bits and pieces, enough to understand he was cruel, selfish, and destructive. She'd left him nearly a decade ago, and by the time I came along, she was a single mom, trying to keep things steady for her teenage daughter, Ellie. I didn't hesitate. I knew what I was stepping into, or at least I thought I did. The first few years were good, not perfect, but real. Ellie was distant at first, guarded. I didn't blame her. I wasn't her dad, and I never tried to be. I just showed up, helped with her school projects, made sure the fridge was full, picked her up when she forgot her bike at the park. Little things. The invisible work of love. Diane seemed grateful. She'd smile across the dinner table and squeeze my hand during movies. I took care of the bills, the mortgage, the home repairs. I worked overtime more often than not, but I never complained. I wanted them to feel safe, to feel chosen. And then, slowly, something changed. It started small. Diane's phone became more guarded. Locked screens, sudden laughter in another room. She started going for walks she never used to take. Ellie, who'd once begun warming up to me, asking for help with college forms, borrowing my car, became cold again. Short answers, glares that didn't make sense. One night, I came home later than usual. The house was quiet, dark. I heard voices coming from the back porch. I stayed in the hallway, listened. It was Diane and Ellie. "She doesn't need to know right now," Diane whispered. "He's trying. Just give it time." Ellie replied, "But you said you missed him, that you wanted this." There was a long pause. "I do," Diane said. That was the moment something cracked in me. I didn't know what this was, but I knew. Deep down, it wasn't about me. The next morning, I acted normal, made coffee, kissed Diane on the cheek. I wasn't ready to confront it, not yet. I needed more. And that's when I began to watch. Not obsessively, not angrily, just carefully. Diane had always told me Carter was gone, out of state, out of reach. But one day, while paying a routine electric bill online, I saw a charge on our joint account from a diner 2 towns over. A diner we'd never been to. I checked the timestamp. Sunday, 3:20 p.m. Diane had told me she was at a self-care yoga retreat all afternoon that day. I drove out to that diner the next weekend, sat in the corner booth, waited. I didn't know what I was expecting, but I didn't expect him. I recognized him from an old photo I'd once seen shoved in the back of Diane's closet. Carter. He was older now, broad-shouldered, calm-looking, which made the stories I'd heard about him harder to reconcile. He didn't look like a monster, just a man eating scrambled eggs and toast like anyone else. What shook me wasn't that he was there. It was that Ellie walked in 15 minutes later. She slid into the booth with him, laughing like it was normal. Like this had happened many times before. I didn't confront them. I just sat in my car afterward and stared at the dashboard. My hands were shaking, not with rage, but with disbelief. This wasn't just betrayal, this was a network of secrets. My stepdaughter had been helping her mother meet with her abusive ex. The same man Diane had cried about in our early months. The same man she said had left scars that never fully faded. And now she was seeing him again. That night, Diane came home and acted like nothing happened. Kissed me. Asked what I wanted for dinner. I told her I wasn't hungry. Over the next few days, I gathered more. I checked the cell phone records. I found calls to a number labeled work, made late at night. When I called it myself, I got Carter's voicemail. I placed a small camera inside our living room lamp. I didn't want to, but I had to know if he'd been here, in my home. A week later, I got my answer. They were in the house, alone, while I was at work. Diane told me she was running errands. Carter stood in my living room like he belonged there. Diane didn't look scared or cautious. She looked happy. She touched his arm. He kissed her cheek. And Ellie? She walked in and barely flinched. I shut the laptop. That night, I sat in the garage, in the car, lights off. I felt something in me I didn't recognize. It wasn't rage, it wasn't sadness, it was clarity. Like something I'd always suspected had finally come into focus. I wasn't their protector, I was their placeholder. I was the man who filled the fridge, fixed the broken sink, paid for vacations. I was the safe choice while they quietly courted chaos. But now I had a decision to make. Leave quietly and let them fall apart on their own? Or make sure the truth surfaced? Make sure they understood what it felt like to be exposed, undone, just as I had been. I started small. I backed up all the surveillance footage, copied the phone logs. I even found a few receipts Ellie had thrown away in her room, gift cards she'd used to buy Carter things with my name on the account. I met with a lawyer, asked him how shared property worked if a marriage dissolved due to concealed infidelity. He said I'd need clear proof. I smiled and handed him a folder. I didn't tell Diane anything, yet. I just kept being the same man she'd always known, steady, supportive, predictable. But I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't eating much either. I was planning. Because betrayal doesn't just break trust, it breaks identity. And when a man has built his entire self around love, protection, and sacrifice, only to discover it was never enough, well, that kind of man doesn't just walk away. He makes sure they feel it, not with violence, not with rage, but with truth. And truth, when revealed at the right time, in the right way, can destroy everything. The days that followed were filled with quiet storms. Every time Diane kissed me goodbye or Ellie asked for the car keys, I smiled. I played the role: husband, provider, stepfather. I didn't flinch, I didn't accuse. Because when you're planning to dismantle a house built on lies, you don't storm in with a wrecking ball. You pull it apart, brick by brick, until the whole thing collapses under its own weight. That Sunday, I took Diane out to brunch, a place she loved. Little spot by the lake with cinnamon coffee and overpriced omelets. She laughed like everything was normal, talked about wanting to repaint the kitchen, asked if we should start planning a trip for the holidays. I just nodded, asking subtle questions like, "Do you ever miss your old life? And if Carter ever changed, would it matter?" She tilted her head at me like I'd just asked about the weather. "He's not the same man anymore," she said, then added quickly, "But that doesn't mean I miss him." I just smiled. Of course. But I saw the flicker in her eyes. That pause, the hesitation. The truth was unraveling her even if she didn't realize it yet. That night, I checked the camera footage again. Carter had been back while I was out with Diane. Ellie had let him in. He brought a small box, no idea what was inside. But they went upstairs, to our bedroom. I watched Diane sit on the edge of the bed. Carter stood over her. They didn't speak much, but she looked torn. She ran her fingers through her hair the way she always did when she was overwhelmed. Still, she didn't stop him from sitting beside her. I turned the laptop off. That was the last time I checked the footage. I didn't need to watch anymore. I knew what I had to do. I met with a second lawyer the next day. This one specialized in family law. I told him I wasn't just looking for a divorce. I wanted full separation. I wanted the house. I wanted my financial records clean. I didn't want to pay a dime more to people who'd used me like scaffolding. He warned me it wouldn't be easy. But when I showed him the documentation, the calls, the recordings, the financial paper trail, his tone changed. This, he said, isn't just infidelity. This is manipulation, possibly even fraud. I nodded. Good. Then let's make sure the truth has its day. Over the next few weeks, I withdrew emotionally, just slightly, not enough to raise suspicion. I let Diane think I was just distracted by work. Ellie barely noticed. I think she was more focused on texting Carter from her locked phone in the corner of the living room. Meanwhile, I had the lawyer draw up the paperwork, quietly moved half of our shared assets into a secured account under my name. I even filed a change of mailing address to a P.O. box, just in case things got messy. The breaking point came on a Wednesday evening, I came home early, earlier than they expected. Carter was in the kitchen, my kitchen. He froze when I stepped through the door. Diane turned from the sink, startled. She wore a look I hadn't seen in years. Guilt, raw and unable to hide. "Colin," she began, voice soft. I looked at Carter. He didn't move, didn't apologize. He just offered a tight smile like this was some awkward dinner party. "Didn't realize you were home early," he said. I stared at him, then turned to Diane. "You invited him into my house?" Diane looked down. "I was going to tell you—" "When? After you handed him the keys, or after you gave him my seat at the table?" Her eyes welled up, but I wasn't moved. I didn't yell, I didn't argue. I just walked past both of them, straight to the filing cabinet in the den. Pulled out a thick envelope and returned. I dropped it on the kitchen counter. "These are the divorce papers, already signed on my end. My lawyer will be in touch." Diane gasped. "You're ending this? Like this?" I didn't flinch. "I'm ending your lies. This isn't revenge. This is clarity." Carter scoffed. "You always thought you were better than me." I turned to him calmly. "I didn't need to be better. I just needed to be honest. Something neither of you ever managed." I packed a bag and left that night. I stayed with a friend out of town, someone who knew the basics but not the details. I didn't tell anyone else. I didn't need to explain. Diane tried calling, left voicemails, texted long paragraphs filled with regret and confusion and "please just talk to me." I never replied. Ellie texted once, just one line. "You were never really family anyway." I stared at that message for a long time. Then I deleted it. I was done trying to earn a place in a house that had always been temporary for me. The real twist came 3 weeks later. I received a package, no return address. Inside was a USB drive and a letter. The drive contained audio recordings of Carter, not just with Diane, but with others. Angry, manipulative conversations, planning something. The letter was unsigned, but I knew the handwriting. It was Ellie's. I don't know why she sent it. Maybe guilt. Maybe an attempt to turn me against her mother. Maybe both. But what mattered was the content. It proved Carter had never changed, that his involvement in their lives had always been about control, about revenge. He didn't love Diane. He wanted to destroy her comfort. And I had been the obstacle. I forwarded the contents to my lawyer, and I kept a backup just in case. I didn't need to expose it publicly, just legally. That evidence changed the divorce proceedings. Diane's lawyer backed off their demands. The settlement tipped heavily in my favor. I kept the house, the assets. My name was cleared from every shared account. And Diane? She had to start over, with Carter or without him. I don't know. I didn't ask. I walked back into my home, 2 months later. Alone, but free. The walls were the same, the furniture still there. But the energy had shifted. The air was different. This was no longer a house built for three. It was a home reclaimed by one. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like a background character in someone else's drama. I felt like the author. Because betrayal is brutal. It reshapes everything you think you know. But sometimes what's shattered isn't meant to be fixed. It's meant to be replaced with something stronger, something honest, something earned. There's a strange silence that settles in a house after the storm. Not the kind of silence that's lonely. It's deeper than that. Like the space is trying to relearn how to breathe. For the first few days back in my house, I found myself listening for footsteps that would never come. The soft knock of Ellie asking for help with a school project. Diane humming off key while brushing her teeth. That background rhythm of a family, flawed, messy, but present. But now it was just me. And for a while, that was harder than I expected. I didn't miss them. Not in the way most people would think. I didn't want them back. I didn't regret my decisions. But I missed the idea of them. The story I'd built in my head. The life I thought I had. Grief is like that. It doesn't always mourn the people who left. Sometimes it just mourns the version of you that existed before the truth. I kept working, fixed up the garage, repainted the guest room, took a few weekend trips alone, started running again in the early mornings. It wasn't about distraction, it was about recovery, about reminding myself that healing isn't always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it's just showing up for your own life, even when no one else does. One evening, a letter arrived, handwritten, no return name on the envelope. I almost tossed it, thinking it was some kind of junk, but the handwriting stopped me. It was Diane's. I opened it. Carefully, the letter was 3 pages long. No apologies, not really, more like an explanation, or what she thought counted as one. She wrote about Carter, about how when she first saw him again, it was like stepping into an old dream. Not a good one, but a familiar one. She said she didn't know why she let him back in, that it started as curiosity, then guilt, then weakness. She said she never meant to betray me, that I had been good to her. Too good, in her words. That line stuck with me. Too good, as if kindness was a flaw, as if providing stability somehow made me less real, less exciting. She wrote that Ellie had always wondered why her father was gone, that maybe seeing him again gave her a sense of control she never had as a child. She never asked me for forgiveness, that at least I respected. But in the final paragraph, she asked something else. She asked me to consider something I hadn't expected. She said, if you're willing, there's someone you should meet, someone who's asking questions I can't answer. At the bottom of the letter, she wrote a name, Lily. I didn't recognize it. Then I saw the photo tucked into the envelope. A girl, about 6 years old. Black curls, soft eyes. Diane wrote simply, your goddaughter. I stared at the photo for a long time. It didn't make sense at first. Diane had never mentioned a goddaughter, never mentioned a friend with a child that young. But then, at the end of the letter, in fine print, she's Carter's child. But he abandoned her again. Her mother, my cousin, passed away last year. I'm all she has, but I'm not what she needs. I didn't know what to do with that. For days I avoided responding, but something in me kept going back to that photo. She looked like Ellie once did, before the world made her suspicious. I met Lily 2 weeks later. It wasn't dramatic, just a quiet visit to the same lake cafe where Diane and I once ate brunch. Diane brought her, but didn't stay. She just handed Lily's hand to me and said, you don't owe anyone anything. But she asked to meet the man who once tried to save a broken family. Then she left. Lily was shy, polite, smart. She asked if I liked puzzles. I said yes. We spent the afternoon building a small one together on the table between bites of grilled cheese. When she laughed, it sounded like hope. That's when I realized something. Not every story ends with revenge. Sometimes the real justice is becoming something better than what tried to break you. Not to prove a point, but to prove to yourself that betrayal doesn't define your future, only your past. I started seeing Lily more often, sometimes at the park, sometimes just to talk. No titles, no promises, just presence. And slowly, the house didn't feel so silent anymore. I replaced the old photos, took down the wedding picture, put up landscapes, family shots from before I'd met Diane. One day, I added a picture of me and Lily sitting on a bench mid-laugh. It wasn't about filling the space. It was about claiming it. Ellie never reached out again. Carter disappeared. Again. Word got around that he'd left town, burned a few bridges, got into some legal trouble. I didn't follow the details. I didn't care to. Diane tried once more to call. I didn't pick up. Some things once broken are better left buried, but not everything. Because when people say family, they often mean biology, blood, marriage. But I've learned something far more powerful. Family isn't who shares your name, it's who shows up. It's who stays when things get hard. It's who builds puzzles with you on rainy afternoons, not because they have to, but because they want to. I'm not the same man I was when this all began. I'm not looking to save anyone anymore. I'm just living with my eyes open, my heart steady. And for the first time in years, that's more than enough.